It's December 8th, 2017, and you're listening to the IoT Weekly Podcast. Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the IoT Weekly Podcast, brought to you by GearForge Software. My name is Matthew, and I'm joined today by my co-host and good friend, Cliff. How you doing today, Cliff?
I am just doing fantastic, Matthew. How about yourself?
I am doing great. I'm always doing great.
That is so true.
Yeah, somebody told me a long time ago, decide that today is going to be a great day. And that's what I try to do.
I'm always behind that, as you know, and I've done some of those same scenarios. I've actually, even when I'm like just having the worst day ever, what I've noticed is if you crack a big old smile or just laugh at a great joke, it'll just turn your day right around.
Totally. You'll feel better and everybody else will think you're crazy.
Yes. 100%.
Yep. I'm right there with you, though. I do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So what have you been up to, Cliff?
Well, I can tell you I did not play with technology this weekend.
Really?
Yep, really. I know that sounds surprising.
I'm shocked.
No tech at all. I actually went down to New Orleans with my wife for her birthday this past weekend.
Well, that sounds outstanding. Tell me more.
Well, it was just such a fantastic time. Really, it was focused on what she wanted to do, where she wanted to eat, and she has her auntie lives down there, so we spent a lot of time with her, and really just went across the entire Big Easy and just had such a great time. And I'm a huge food person, as you know, Matthew. And probably my favorite food, and I've never tried this before, was barbecue shrimp and grits. Oh my gosh, so good.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's also, I've never had anything like it.
Nope, me neither. So
you know what, though? Basically, anywhere I go, it's always true that my favorite part is the food.
Yeah, it doesn't take much for the food to come out there.
Yep.
So that was kind of the weekend for us, and we got back on Monday. How about you? What have you been up to, Matthew?
I have been I've been spending some time with Django. Do you know what Django is?
Is that a dance?
It's not, but it sounds like one, doesn't it?
It sure does.
It also sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
By Quentin Tarantino, I believe, that I haven't seen, but it's neither of those things. Django is a Python web framework, and it's been around for a long time, but it's new to me, and I have been doing some projects in Django, and I have been loving it, Cliff.
Really?
So good, yes. As a developer, it just hits the sweet spot for a lot of things. Yeah. So that's been fun. Django it's Python, and you know Python is one of my favorite languages.
It is one of your favorite ones. I know that.
Yep, a lot of fun. And I feel super productive, so that's great.
That's even better. Who doesn't feel like wanting to be super productive?
More for less? Yes. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's been a lot of fun and kind of great to get more familiar with that framework and really be getting some stuff done and enjoying it.
Well, the next IoT project that you sort through and leverage Django with, and of course we get client permission, we'll have to maybe showcase that a little bit. Yeah,
well, and for building out like an administrative site for managing some IoT stuff, it's a pretty good fit for that, actually. Not necessarily for handling the actual communication with the devices. That wouldn't be my first choice, but boy, you need to log into a user interface and be able to manage some stuff. It's pretty good for that.
And I haven't seen a project yet where you don't need some sort of administrative back end, and user and role management is not something I want to build again.
Never again, right?
Nope,
Never again.
That is the last thing I want to rebuild.
Yeah. Yep. So that's been a ton of fun.
Nice.
So Cliff, I understand we've got some mail.
We do. I was super excited that we actually ended up getting some mail. Apparently, you and I are not the only ones that listen to the podcast.
Oh,
We
you
do
listen
have.
to it?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. So it's not you and I as the only ones, or
Yep.
excuse me, I.
Audience of two. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
audience of two. So we do have others that do listen to this, so that's good. We actually got some feedback from Logan. He hails from Minnesota.
Minnesota, that's home territory for us.
I know, and
Yeah.
I'll read through this, and we did a few things, but I think he has some questions that you might have answered too. So I'll go through this here and pause if you want to answer a couple of these. So number one, any presentations from the IoT Summit online, and I believe he's talking about the Amazon reInvent,
Mm.
because we talked about that a little bit last week.
Hmm.
And then he said, if so, what do you recommend for small business owners or managers to watch if they can squeeze in one or two? Well, I'll take this one, and I'll give you a couple more for you, Matthew. There is one I'd recommend. Amazon ended up coming out with an IoT state of IoT for like 2017 or something like that. I went ahead and linked that on the GearForge website, so folks that did want to watch through that can. It's about an hour long. I ended up downloading it from YouTube and watching it on the plane ride on the way out, and it really touched on all the different areas plus a few more, and I thought it was well worth the watch. So if you go to the GearForge website and look at podcasts and then go to episode 1, there's a link there to the actual YouTube video. So,
Interesting.
yep. So here, a question for you. Cool to hear about Firefox. Can you provide links to speed tests done by other people? Might enhance those show notes on the website.
All right. Yeah, that is a great question. And the new Firefox is really it's really fast. I can definitely include some speed tests in the show notes if you want to take a look. But from everything I've read, it is probably not a whole lot faster than Chrome. It is probably just about the same. And from just my unscientific viewpoint, running it doesn't feel a whole lot different, to be honest with you.
Sure.
So I think from the casual user probably is not going to notice a drastic change here. But we can include some links. I know that an article on Verge had done some tests, and they said they found it to be faster. But again, I think this is a small amount and probably not noticeable to most.
Sure. Yeah, I think if you give me those, Matthew, I'll get them put up there for our readers to look through.
All right, great.
So Logan goes on to say, fun to hear about the DDoS attack. So maybe not fun, but interesting. Yes.
Fun for him, maybe.
Yeah, fun for him.
Try running a server sometime.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That's no fun whatsoever. He really enjoyed listening to Net Neutrality with regards to how it relates to IoT. And a side note, he's actually really curious how you possibly program the music into the podcast.
Interesting. Yeah, so the music, the sting at the beginning and the end, actually have a script that I wrote to do that. And so when we're done recording the podcast, I take the raw file. I do trim it at the beginning and the end just to, cut it down to the actual length of the podcast, but that's the only manual trim that I do. And then I run a script, and that deals with the initial fade and adding the music at the beginning and also at the end. And so my goal was to try to keep post-processing to be a small amount of time as possible. So
nice. Logan also wanted to know if we could get the photos of the Raspberry Pi Google process. I did get those uploaded to the website. They're there now, so we got 3 different pictures. And then he was curious if you can custom program phrases like, hey, Google, I'd like a large Pepsi, a double cheeseburger, and a large fry, and send that over to a POS. He went on to say that not that it'd be useful, and he thinks people would probably prefer touchscreens. Based off of his question, actually, yes, you can do that. That's 100% possible. There's another Google Voice API that you'd end up integrating, and then based off of that, you could integrate into all of that between the Google Assistant SDK and the Google Voice SDK. And I did play around with the Voice SDK, so yes, that's all 100% possible as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, it's similar to the skills for Amazon Echo, right? It just,
Yep,
you can
exactly.
code it, which, by the way, that is yet another place where Python shows up. I think we talked about this, it seems like that is becoming such a general purpose language. Everybody's using Python.
It is. So that is the extent of the comments, but Logan, I greatly appreciate your feedback, and for everyone else, if you do have feedback, please send it over to podcast@GearForgeSoftware.com. We really appreciate it, and we do try to take actionable results based off of what we get from you guys. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. That's great. And we love the feedback, so keep it coming.
Most definitely.
So Cliff, let me ask you a question.
Go ahead, Matthew.
So let's say you've got this awesome idea for some new IoT thing that you want to build, and it's going to change your business. You're going to go from, small company to a huge company because of this idea. It's going to make your fortune.
I have good ideas like that all the time.
Awesome.
But besides that, I'd be pretty stoked. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I know that you would, and I would too. But here's the thing. Let's say you've got the idea, but now you don't know how to actually implement it. How are you even going to figure out where do you go to get started?
That's a great question. I'd probably start looking into, I don't know, my friends and family to see if there's anybody from any type of geek out there that could help me.
Right. Yeah, you'd find a geek.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly where GearForge Software, who is the sponsor of this podcast, comes into play. So GearForge Software was founded to focus on and develop Internet of Things technology and create custom IoT solutions. There are just so many things you have to consider when you're trying to develop a new idea. You've got the hardware. You've got the software. You got to connect it all to something in the cloud. And there are hackers that want to steal your data and make your customers mad at you. So you want to thwart them if you can. You're probably going to need some technical advisors to help you get through this wild west of IoT, everything crazy that's going on right now. And GearForge Software can help you do that. With 2 IoT labs, GearForge can bring your prototype to life. So you can learn more at GearForgeSoftware.com. And thanks for sponsoring the show.
Yes, kudos. Thank you, GearForge.
And that brings us to our main section.
Bum, bum, bum.
Maybe we need some transitional music there too. Could it just be you saying
I
bum,
could
bum,
do
bum?
I could do the bum 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 every time. It's okay.
Yeah. Excellent. New opening sting. So a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember which episode this was now, but we were talking.
First episode.
It was the very first one.
Episode
0.
Yes.
We were talking about the Amazon. Nope. The Amazon. It's the dash button, right?
Yep. They're calling it the Amazon IoT button.
IoT button. That's right.
Yep.
So I think if I remember correctly, your review of that was it's really cool, but it needs cellular.
Yep. I was saying provisioning wise, it's really difficult because you have to do it on the Wi-Fi. And what I was saying is that I think it would be so much better if it could just come with a SIM card, right? And the battery lasts for essentially 2,000 clicks. So if you could get, from a cost basis, if you could set this thing up so you could get essentially 2,000 clicks with regards to a SIM card, that would just be perfect.
Yeah, and we're talking about a really small amount of data here.
Yeah, we're talking about a button click.
Mm-hmm. So there's been some news on this front.
Yes. So interestingly enough, out of the Amazon reInvent, it looks like Amazon has partnered with, I believe, AT&T, and now they offer a Amazon IoT button that comes with a SIM card. So I'll be sending back a few of my current buttons and probably buying a few more that have a SIM card so we can test those out.
I would just like to say that you heard it here first, folks. We said, this is cool, but it needs a SIM card. And look, I mean, it didn't even take them a week.
Yeah. It's good to know that they're listening and
Yep.
that they're following our advice. So much appreciated, Amazon.
Yep. Thanks, Jeff, for listening to the podcast and taking our advice.
Yes.
And turning it around so fast.
Yeah, the turnaround time was remarkable.
Really amazing.
Just remarkable.
Yeah, that makes me laugh. But it seems like it's such a logical choice, and I think that is what is going to make this device more than a toy, basically. Some of the uses that I thought of immediately all require a SIM card. So.
Yep. And the way and if you listen to that that YouTube video that I talked about earlier, they actually talk about essentially leveraging the IoT buttons in a factory as kind of your basic entry to IoT, distributed IoT. Mm-hmm. And then they talk about going on and leveraging more of the sensors and things like that as a much more comprehensive project. However, they recognize that you may not have Wi-Fi in your factory, which is probably not uncommon.
Well, and I mean, I can think of lots of cases where you may just need to may need to be able to send a signal, basically.
Yep, and that's what they're saying. It's like the machine broke down, click a button. Yeah. Or something's not quite right. You need more inventory stuff, click a button.
So I do think that we're going to need to have some additional, probably the ability to charge these things if that's really going to be the use for these. Yep. 2,000 clicks I think is fine, but for some uses you may want to have lots more clicks than that.
Yep, I would agree with that. So I think you're seeing this is basically phase 2, version 2 maybe of the button. There'll be additional ones because I would love to actually be able to have different. Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more. I think this is just the initial one, just so they can get it out there. There's probably a lot more that's being cooked up right now.
Yep, very cool. It's nice to see some new stuff hitting the market with this level of support, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
It's not a small company with a small device. This is a pretty big rollout, and I can't wait to see what else we get over the next few years. So exciting stuff. Yep. So it looks like Chinese tech giants Baidu and Xiaomi have announced basically a partnership around Internet of Things. So what's going on with this?
Yep, so 2 of China's biggest tech companies, internet search giant Baidu and smartphone maker Xiaomi, have entered into a partnership that'll see them establish an in-depth cooperation.
And that's coming from CNBC, is that right?
That is totally correct, CNBC.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so they're looking at leveraging their strengths in both artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, or IoT, to provide an enhanced experience to users of electronics and smart devices.
So we'll put this link in the show notes. I think what's interesting to me here, Cliff, is just I always tune into some of these announcements because it's kind of interesting to see so many companies getting on board with the sort of the IoT market, if you will. I think everybody's looking at this now as being a big opportunity over the next few years.
I would agree. I see an article come out almost daily about a new partnership here or a new tech company here getting purchased by another company. It's really just blossoming very quickly.
Yeah, it's a really good indicator of kind of where people are predicting the growth to be over the next 10 years, and I think IoT is where it's at.
Definitely, I would agree.
So our next article is similar, actually. This is about it's about milk and IoT.
Seriously?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Huh,
and
okay.
The article is titled "How an IoT Sensor is Helping Australian Milk Reach China Faster."
Interesting.
Yeah. What I found interesting here is in a nutshell. So this is an article about Telestra, which is an Australian telecom. From the article, it says it's from Telestra's website. Telestra is Australia's leading telecommunications and technology company, offering a full range of communication services and competing in all telecommunications markets. It's some great marketing speak there. I had never heard of them before, but now I have. So, and you have too.
Yes.
So what they have been doing is really doubling down on IoT, and specifically around agriculture, which I feel like is something you're talking about all the time, Cliff.
Yes, yes. I think there's a huge opportunity specifically with the agriculture scenario. And even when I was in New Orleans, we actually stayed at a bed and breakfast, and there's a farmer there, and I was talking with her, and she's like, "What are you talking about IoT?" And I started describing from an agricultural standpoint how the tractors are connected. She's like, "Oh, yeah." She goes, our tractors are all connected, and they send data up and everything else, and we get statistics out of it. So I was like, yes, that's IoT right there in the field, literally. She's like, "Oh, yeah." So she goes, "We're already doing that."
Yeah, it's super interesting. This article is talking about specifically using sensors to monitor milk as it travels, I guess, from the factory in Australia to the store. And it measures things like temperature and location and uploads to the cloud every 15 minutes. And what's kind of interesting there is this offers, I think it offers some definite logistic improvements, right? But it also offers a better guarantee. So basically, as somebody who might be tasked with having to purchase this milk from a company, how do I know that it has been kept at safe temperatures for that entire time? And there are a lot of things hinging. I'm sort of just trusting. Right now I can look at the data, and as the company providing the milk, it's like you think about the risk management that goes on, right? You have to ensure that your employees are checking the temperature and all those things, and now you can have a robot that does that for you, and then you have an employee who's checking the data, right? And so I think it just it's a good example of using IoT in the field.
Well, I think the quality of the product is only going to be increased because of this, and the nice thing is I'm betting the employee just double checks the statistics and says, "Oh, look, everything's fine," or maybe it's a scenario where you just get alerted if it's not.
Well,
right?
That's what I was thinking. Is you don't really need a human to review it. You just set up what the parameters should be, and it should wake you up and tell you your milk is too hot.
Exactly. Or if it's getting potentially within kind of a danger zone even. So that way you can react to it possibly.
Exactly. So your shipment doesn't go bad.
Yep, exactly.
And the article did note that it has really sped up the process of transporting the milk. And I'm not sure that I understand that, but they've cut it down from 3 weeks to under 2 days. So you can read the article if you want more details.
Those are some fast cows.
I know, right?
Yes.
And we actually have two other related news items for Telestra specifically. In November 1st, there was a news article saying that they had acquired Australian GPS and telemetrics fleet management solutions. MT Data is the company's name. And
yeah, I can definitely see how that would help, especially with the cattle, just from the milk scenario.
Yeah, and again, I think it's another example of companies that are sort of strategically positioning themselves around IoT because, again, similar to the Baidu news, this is the growth area. This is what people are anticipating seeing, and they want to be prepared for it when it really hits, which it's coming.
Well, I can easily see this from a logistical standpoint, just like they're sending data with regards to in transition items. If we're talking GPS and fleet management solutions, now you tie into this your communication capabilities along with your sensors. You've got a cradle to grave or whatever you want to call that solution.
End to end, for sure.
End to end completely. Instead of getting probably a section in there where you're like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, now you can literally geoboxy the tracking the entire way and understand the data that's still being sent back.
Absolutely. I think you're right. And from their press release, they said that they're really aiming to sort of offer business-ready IoT solutions. And they're targeting the heavy vehicle industry. And they are transitioning toward, get this, future autonomous vehicle technologies, which is another trend that we should talk about at some point. Maybe that's a future episode. It's, I think it's IoT adjacent, but it's very interested. I think if you're interested in this podcast, I think that is a very interesting topic and we should cover it.
Yeah, well, the heavy vehicle industry alone, there's actually quite a few capabilities around that, actually.
Absolutely, and I think there are lots of opportunity as you begin to automate aspects of, of anything dealing with the delivery of goods. There's a ton of opportunity around that space for IoT, and I think autonomous vehicles are one part of it. These sensors are another part of it. Shipment tracking, everything. There's just an awful lot of room for growth there.
Definitely.
So yet another Telestra-related news item.
They are on fire, aren't they?
Well, this one goes back a little further, but because I was trying to figure out for the previous article, I was like, well, who's Telestra? I found this one too, and that is in May they launched Telestra Labs, which they say is for innovation and IoT hub. What do you think of that?
What does that actually mean?
Well, here's the quote from the article.
Okay.
Or I guess this was maybe the press release, but the new open IoT lab situated in Telestra's Melbourne headquarters will likely provide a space for students, startups, and businesses to use controlled Cat M1 and NB IoT radio networks to create, test, and prototype their IoT solutions.
Well, I tell you what, Matthew, if Telestra would like us to fly over to their lab, I would be happy to broadcast from there and just tell you what it looked like.
That would be great. Yeah, maybe we could do an interview with them while we're over there. And
that'd be a ton of fun.
Again, I think, man, it's interesting to see these companies kind of getting on board, right? It's like, well, we want to be the one with the IoT lab, so people come to us. So
where are you going to literally test your ideas if you don't have some sort of lab? I mean, just pulling together all the equipment and everything else, it takes time.
Yep, it absolutely does. So, yep, very, very interesting. Lots of Telestra-related stuff.
All right. What else do we have on the docket here, Matthew?
Well, we've got a device that I think is probably not quite IoT, but still interesting. So it's called Somnox. Have you heard about this?
Did you say socks?
I said Somnox.
Oh, no, I have not heard about that. Wow.
All right. Well, so this is actually a recent Kickstarter, and it's let me try to describe it for our listeners. It looks like a pillow. And it's a sleep aid, so intended to help you if you have trouble sleeping. And it provides a lot of the things that are kind of common solutions for that. It, as I understand it, offers sort of a heartbeat. It offers maybe gentle vibrations or that kind of thing. It offers white noise, all of which are known to help people sleep. And it's interesting, it connects up to an app for configuration, just like everything these days, right? And it's this kind of neat little device that they've put together. And I think there are several interesting things here. One is that I took a look at the kind of the picture that they posted of their build process or whatever. It's basically it's a Somnox taken apart here. And I tell you what. I don't know what you think, Cliff, but those look like a couple of Arduino mega boards sitting there.
I would totally agree, and I almost wonder if it's not a Raspberry Pi Zero in there also, possibly.
That little one, yeah.
100% agree. Those are Arduino boards.
Yeah, it looks like it. And if not, it's something very, very close.
Those are very close. I would agree.
Yeah. Which I think that's kind of cool, and I think it's interesting because this is a concrete example of people using some of this off-the-shelf microcontroller boards prototype and potentially even ship products, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a lot more cost effective than trying to get a custom designed circuit board. And another thing that I think is kind of interesting here is I was unable to figure out if this thing actually collects any data. I
Oh,
looked on their
really?
site and I didn't spend a ton of time, but yeah, I was sort of interested in that because if you think about it, you think about like another form of thinking about wearables. This
Yep.
Somnox device is sort of similar, I think, to a wearable. It's this sort of peripheral device that you use. You have it on your person, and I think about my Fitbit. It tracks my sleep, right?
Yes, it does.
Tracks lots of things, actually. As John Hodgman likes to say, it's a dystopia band because, they can watch you.
Yes, they
um,
can.
but in this case, I was unable to see if this thing actually tracks anything about sleep patterns or that kind of thing. It seems like a natural extension of the device to kind of combine those two.
I would think so.
Yeah, and that actually is, to me, the most interesting question there, which is around IoT and sort of
Well,
privacy and
I
all of
think
that.
like this if it did track sleep patterns and things like that, I could easily see this being leveraged potentially in your care facilities. So
Absolutely.
that way you can say, all right, automatically chart this for me to let me know how's this sleeping. If you come in and say, well, how's mom or dad or grandma, grandpa, how are they sleeping? Oh, here, look at the chart. It's got it spit out, and there you go.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? And I mean, that's the beauty of the Fitbit and similar devices
Hmm.
is I don't have to do a thing. I mean, I would never track my sleep, but it does it for me, and it's useful. So, one other thing about this that I think is very interesting is I'm not 100% sure that you would be able to easily gather that data because if you think about how you sleep, if you've got it in your arms or something, maybe
Yep.
then. But as soon as it rolls out of your arms and it's just laying on the bed, I'm not sure how it would actually keep track of that you're
Yeah, I don't
sleeping.
know. That's a great question.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the kind of wearables in general and sort of the privacy aspect because I made the joke about dystopia bands, but there's some truth to that, right? The more that wearable devices and devices in general have intelligence and can report data back to the cloud, the easier it is to keep track of where people are and what they're doing. And I
Yeah,
think this has a lot of potential abuse.
I totally agree. And I was speaking with an attorney, gosh, last week about this, and she has already mentioned, and I think in a future episode I might be able to get a quote from her about her opinion around this, but they're already struggling with who owns that information.
Interesting. How do you mean?
Because they've already got issues with regards to if the data is being collected, do you own that data? Does the person that created the information, do they own it? And what she said is in some instances there's no terms of service or anything like that you're agreeing to essentially. So in most previous cases where you sign up, you got a terms of service that tells you the amount of data and the privacy and everything else that's being collected and what they plan on doing that. And she said in some instances what they're seeing is there's no information provided about what they're using with that or anything. So from a data standpoint, you're in a fairly gray area. And I'd like to get more of a quote from her. We briefly talked about this, but she's got a very some interesting opinions that I think would be good for a future show.
Yeah, so she might be interested in doing an interview, perhaps?
Quite possibly. I'm trying to convince her that she should.
Oh, that would be great.
Yep.
You know, so that's interesting because I think you're pointing out something that I haven't spent a ton of time thinking about, but it actually came up in a practical context recently. We were talking to a client, and one of the things we were specifically talking about was the case where something doesn't have an explicit sort of user license, right?
Yep.
And the example that we were talking about was, for example, using the pay at the gas pump, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never used one where I've ever been prompted with any legalese that I can see to use that device, right? But there are so many cases where you can think of, before using this app or before using a website, that you have to go through and acknowledge these terms and conditions before you're allowed to use it. I'm just wondering, there's probably some pretty substantial legal gray areas surrounding IoT because of that, right? Because the uses are different. It's not like installing an application on your computer. You can present the user with a license up front.
Yes, exactly. And again, it comes back to I think there's going to be quite a few gray areas. And I think you actually have an example of a rather sensitive scenario, don't you, Matthew?
I do, yeah. I remember hearing about this, and I thought it was pertinent to our kind of discussion around IoT and privacy, and that is there is an adult massager that turns out was secretly recording people's intimate moments.
And so massager, you mean like a back massager, Matthew?
I don't. I mean more like the vibrator kind.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
like a personal massager.
Different. Okay, I was like, oh, like a little back massager. No.
Yeah. Yeah, so apparently
personal moments is very personal moments.
Very personal, and it would record audio of those very personal moments and then upload it to the configuration app on the phone and then leave it in a folder there. And so basically, if you used this device, you were sort of unsuspectingly being recorded, and you wouldn't even know that the audio was on your phone.
That's horrible.
And you actually noticed there was a follow-up on this story this week.
Yeah, so the company came out and actually said that they called it a minor bug.
A minor bug.
and they said that the sound files weren't actually being sent to their servers. And what they said was that the users actually gave the app access to the mic and the camera, but only to use the in-app chat function and to send voice clips on command, not constant recording when in use. So it sounds like they're leveraging your permissions when it says, "Yep, I grant the app to do this," and based off of that is essentially where they took their scenario. So a bit of a bug, apparently.
Bit of a bug, yeah. And I think it's better that it doesn't go to the cloud. But a couple of things. One is that it's not really still not great that there are files sitting on the phone, right? Even though that's maybe less of an issue. But it seems also that they were just one step away from uploading it to the cloud.
Oh, yes. Well, I think even just on your phone itself could be very problematic.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it definitely seems like something that you would want to make sure that this was being done with the user's full permission.
Yep.
Not something that happens accidentally as a side effect, because the consequences of that could be really embarrassing for a user, right?
It'd be my luck. I would hand the darn phone over to my daughter to say, "Hey, can you fix this on my phone? Because the darn thing isn't working." Or it's not even that. My son would pick it up while we're out doing something and be like, "I'm gonna change your," because he thinks he's being funny, change my ringtone, and it ends up getting changed to something that it shouldn't be. Like, Dad, What is that? Just put it away, son.
Just never mind. Runs from the room.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, I do think it's a good example of, bugs happen. I spend all my time writing software, and bugs do happen.
Yep.
But this to me feels less like a bug and more like it was sort of a product oversight. And it's another reason why it's just really important to really have a clear strategy when you're building any kind of application, but especially IoT. I think IoT, because it's in your home or it's in your business, there are just a lot of things you got to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was probably some developer thinking, "Oh my God, this would be the funniest thing ever." Is what happening.
Yep. Yeah, probably. So what's going on with this disposable nano tag?
Yeah, so in the news, SimTech launches a disposable LoRa-enabled nano tag for IoT. LoRa is just another communication standard. There's a multitude of communication standards out there, but this is just another one. It's a low-powered that can go quite a distance.
And we're talking about LoRa, L-O-R-A,
Yes,
right?
yes, LoRa. So
not Laura.
Yes, yes, LoRa.
Yes.
Very much so. So so here's the actual, based off of the website. It says, by offering lower cost, disposable, LoRa enabled tags, we can expand the current landscape of use cases for Syntex LoRa devices and wireless radio frequency technology, and allow companies to integrate the technology to drive many more diverse IoT use cases. We believe the number of use cases should expand rapidly as our connectivity and cloud partners start to leverage the LoRa enabled tag. So currently, the tags will be commercially available in both flexible tape and paper substrates in 2018, and are currently in trials by a number of LoRa Alliance members.
Oh, so that's really cool.
Yep. So that'd be a fun one to play with next year, I think.
How much are we talking about? Do you have any sense of pricing?
No, I could not find the prices. I really was digging around for that, because I'm like, what do they consider low cost? Is it 30 cents or is it $50? I don't know.
Well, it makes a big difference for what industries you can target with that. So
yeah, I looked around, could not find what the cost was.
It's usually not a good sign.
No, and I was like, what? And I was curious too, is like, well, do you have to buy, like, they're super cheap, but you got to buy 10,000 of these things at a time? I don't know. So it was more of a press release. So really, it wasn't, the details weren't there, because again, it's like, how do you provision these devices and things of that sort?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Well, that'll be one to watch for sure. And we'll probably have some more news on that maybe in a future episode.
Most definitely. We'll just keep an eye on those different examples as they come out.
That's what we do, right? We keep an eye on the IoT news, so you don't have to. You can come to us and get a wrap up.
Precisely.
Fantastic. Well, Cliff, that brings us to the end of our news segment.
Well, I would like to just remind everybody, if they do have feedback, please let us know at podcast@GearForgeSoftware.com. We'd love to get the feedback.
Yep, it's always good to hear from you. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we may have reached the end of episode 2 of the IoT Weekly podcast. So thank you very much for everybody for listening. And we hope to see you back here again next week for our next episode. Cliff, until I talk to you next time, have a great day.
Take care, my friend.
See ya. Bye-bye.